Hello, this is Dave. Well, friends, here we are at that place that we've been shouting from the rooftops about for decades. It almost seems surreal, doesn't it? The irony is that the Muggles are afraid, hiding away in their houses. They're not actually frightened enough. Their fear is tempered with complacency. They're more bored than scared. Many others think of this as some kind of extra holiday, secure in a comforting fiction that in a few weeks the all clear will be sounded and everything will go back to normal. The truth is that the Muggles simply don't know enough to be scared. They don't realise that what's unfolding inch by inch before our very eyes is the greatest danger to humanity since the imaginary threat of nuclear annihilation. And yet most of them will face this clear and present danger cowering under the kitchen table, surrounded by toilet rolls. While we were filling our collective bellies with their poisoned bread and numbing our brains with their televised circuses, a small number of elite families have been inching us towards, this very moment. Herding us this way and that with a steady diet of contrived wars and not so natural disasters and ever-present false flag phantom fears. And now here we are in the Endgame. That hypnotic black mirror in the corner of the room has programmed the Muggles to know what martial law looks like, so they don't actually recognise it when it's forced upon them. But nonetheless, almost the entire human race is in lockdown. And even though it seems voluntary, very slowly, boiling frog styly, the police are starting to get more and more insistent. Drones with loudspeakers are barking orders at people walking their dogs. And fat, ugly old men with serious vitamin D deficiencies are busily weaving a web of fake legislation so that documentation is required whenever you venture outside your house. And while you're conveniently locked in your concrete box, 5G antennas are popping up like weeds. And not just at the end of your street, but a few hundred yards apart all across the world. Why is it you think that billions of people are ordered to stay at home, yet 5G installation is considered an essential service? Do you really think the government that forced retired people to choose between eating and keeping their houses warm during the severe winters actually cares how long it takes you to download a film? Do you think that a government that's forced young people out of a family home into crushing student debt, leaving them with no prospects, 0-hour contracts and zero opportunity to buy or even rent a property, do you think that they care that they can play Call of Duty without lag? No. The pantomime is over. The pretense that there are separate countries with their own separate goals and aspirations has ended, and the one world government has been revealed. Each country, each so-called country, acting in lockstep, reading from the same script issued to them by their shadowy masters at the last Bilderberg meeting. This is a worldwide agenda that does not benefit the people, but is actually vital for their complete control over us. But, as the lockdowns and the curfews and the armed soldiers in the street and the parliamentary dictatorship becomes the new normal, so long as they have their PlayStations, their big screen TVs, their government-approved synthetic cannabis with a K, and a cupboard full of ersatz food-like products, the Muggles are going to fit snugly into this new reality. But what's really happened here? In the film Wag the Dog, Dustin Hoffman, he plays this Hollywood film producer who convinces the entire American population that they're at war with Albania entirely through the medium of television. The New World Order controllers have manufactured a wag the dog scenario in Wuhan, China. But they just couldn't, they couldn't just do it. They had to practice it first. And more importantly, they had to tell us what they were planning to do. So in October 2019, the Bill and Melinda Gates of Hell Foundation hosted the Event 201, which exactly simulated the same viral pandemic scenario that coincidentally occurred a few months later. Except their pandemic was from an imaginary virus called the CAPS virus. And it's plausibly deniable that this coincidence might be. One of their panel made a slip up and revealed the truth about their CAPS virus.
Actually increasing some of our focus on the cutting edge science and research and development. This is an unknown pathogen. We live in a period of amazing scientific discovery that may not have been focused on coronavirus. So we're putting some of our philanthropic resources into cutting edge research on getting countermeasures faster, trying to accelerate that 1 year to a vaccine.
So when this simulation went live in Wuhan, China, we saw people who seemed to have the symptoms that we've come to associate with a viral infection. We saw many with severe flu-like symptoms and many others with a persistent dry cough that lasts for weeks. We also saw people who suddenly keeled over in the street, something that was not, or something that's absolutely not consistent with any sort of viral infection. So what's really going on here? Well, I've explained this before, but viruses are substances that are manufactured by the human body in order to deal with toxicity. Okay, viruses are not living organisms. They don't come from the outside. You can't actually catch a virus. They don't cause disease. They're the body's response to cell poisoning. Yeah, and they always appear when the cells get poisoned. There is a theory, which I totally agree with, that says that certain radio frequencies can cause cell poisoning. So this makes sense to me because the 2.4 gigahertz in microwave ovens, those frequencies are absorbed by hydrogen atoms in water. And basically the water starts heating up, but it alters the structure of that water. So that microwave water causes cell damage in plants and kills them. And you can do the experiment where you get some microwave water, let it cool and start watering your plants with it, and the plants will start getting misshapen and they'll die. So all the way up the electromagnetic spectrum, there are certain frequencies that can cause the body harm. Ultraviolet light kills organisms, as do microwaves and X-rays and gamma radiation. But under normal conditions, we're not ordinarily exposed to such hazards. But that all changed in 1918 with the invention of radio, and the whole Earth became blanketed in artificial radio frequencies. And the result of that was the Spanish flu epidemic. Humans are kind of hard to kill, and not all of them are going to respond to the same degree to cell poisoning. As I said, the body manufactures viruses to clean up the toxicity and to transport it out of the body, which on the outside looks like flu-like symptoms. So whenever your cells get poisoned, your body responds with varying levels of severity, which to our eyes manifests as colds, flus and pneumonia. So every time we've seen a step up in radio frequency technology, we've seen an accompanying viral epidemic localized to the implementation of that technology. And now we have the 5th generation of radio frequency technology. It's untested, so it's experimental, and its 60 gigahertz frequencies are just below that those that are already in use as weapons. The US military's euphemistically named active denial system uses 95 gigahertz. And although they tout it as a non-lethal weapon, the US military isn't in the business of non-lethal weaponry. You know, they don't want to dissuade you, they want to kill. And I guarantee that their active denial system has several classified settings above the stun setting that will turn any enemy combatant into so much burnt toast. So this is my understanding of how these frequencies work. When a particular material element, which is essentially just a standing wave of electromagnetic energy at a particular low frequency, when one of these elements encounters electromagnetic energy at a harmonic resonance, it begins to absorb that energy and therefore undergo some changes. Especially if it's part of a complex molecule, its relationship with other parts of that molecule changes. So, as I said, if you expose water to microwaves, like in a microwave oven, that frequency is absorbed by the hydrogen. So its relationship with the other hydrogen and oxygen atoms changes, and you get things like deuterium and tritium and no doubt other isotopes that we haven't been told about. The result is that you end up with water that is of not the same structure as regular water. You know, an example of that is the heavy water that Nazis were experimenting with, and this water is poisonous to plants and animals. As I said, you know, use microwave water to water your plants with, and your plants are going to die. So the significance of the absorption data in this report that I'm going to actually place here is that 60 gigahertz does exactly the same thing to oxygen and any other oxygen-based molecule, and it renders it poisonous to humans who breathe O2 and plants that are made of cellulose, which obviously contains a lot of oxygen, and which is why you'll find that plants and trees are dying around these towers. The power levels of the electromagnetic energy is not really significant either, because some molecular bonds don't require very much energy to push them into a different configuration. The beauty for them of 60 gigahertz is that its effects can be blamed on natural cold, flu or pneumonia or any other respiratory illness. So it's the perfect stealth weapon. And we all know that Wuhan was the first smart city grid to go online, and the whole city was completely blanketed with 5G. And 2 months later, you had the first outbreak. Then Milan in Italy went online, and they had their outbreak. And even the Diamond Princess cruise ship, which, you know, is effectively isolated from any other population, well, they got an outbreak because they were premiering their 5G service. So right now the mass media are trying desperately hard to convince people that this is actually a real pandemic, even though there is absolutely no evidence of it. You know, in China, there are no more cases of it, and it never even reached epidemic proportions. You know, that is to say that it never got anywhere near the deaths of you know, regular seasonal flu in China. So it wasn't even an epidemic. But nonetheless, you know, the TV stations are up to their old tricks, you know, reusing film footage from one place, such as Italy, and reusing it in New York. You know, using images from video games, all to create a kind of wag the dog styly pandemic on television, just to keep the muggles in fear. But the hospitals that they're saying are crammed with coronavirus victims in every country are all totally empty. They're also building massive hospital warehouses and morgues. You know, the Excel Centre in London has a capacity of 8,000 beds. And then there's all the hollowed out Walmarts all across America, and the stacks of coffin liners that we've been reporting on for years. What are they all there for? Well, they're there for the next phase of this plan. Now this might seem like the calm before the storm, but it really isn't. You know, there's a lot going on. You know, there are offers being made, acceptances gained, and contracts being finalised before the final show can begin. There are many of us who are aware of predictive programming, where the system uses their mass media to show us what they're planning to do years, sometimes decades in advance. And some see that as like adherence to some kind of cosmic law, where they have to tell us of their plans. But the truth is, they can't just get away with telling us. They must also get our agreement to it. So when you present yourself in court and stand up against a judge, not a magistrate but a proper judge, what you'll notice is that judge will make some kind of proclamation or order that seems like it's mandatory and you have to follow it, but then he'll pause briefly. Now, whether he shuffles some papers on his bench or pretends to look for a particular sheet of paper, or feigns confusion looking for the next person to speak to, it depends on the guy's acting style, but what he's doing is trying to cover up the fact that he's pausing, and that pause is your opportunity to object. Yeah? The proclamation or order he gave was merely an offer. Yeah? Do you want to go to jail? Do you want to pay this fine? You know, and if you don't respond in that brief window of opportunity, then silence is deemed as consent, and the offer is tacitly accepted by acquiescence. That's the technical term for it. The governments right now are making offers. You know, would you like to stay in quarantine till June? You know, would you like us to rush this coronavirus act through Parliament? You know, would you like this cashless society? You know, and this is that moment of calm, you know, that's your opportunity to object. But instead, humanity is hiding away at home, sitting on their asses, watching Netflix and playing Call of Duty. You are actually accepting it with your silence. And powers that be will tick it off and say, righto, we'll get that done for you then. So once the 5G network is complete, then that's when the next phase will begin. The lockdown will end, and humanity will re-emerge into a world of financial chaos, and mass unemployment and food shortages. And then they will throw the 5G switch, and it will go live at full strength across the earth. And the most susceptible will simply keel over and die. Many others will experience the severe flu-like symptoms, and they'll find one of the uncomfortable cots with their names on it in one of those plague warehouses all over the world. We're just waiting for you. The rest will get that persistent dry cough that hung around like many of us experienced back in November. That's probably some kind of weapons test. But all of it is going to be blamed on this coronavirus. Now this will drive hordes of muggles, to beg for the vaccines, which will actually cause the real pandemic, and then the second wave of deaths, which means they can keep this pandemic thing going for as long as they like. This cabal has always had several goals for whatever they do. And here's what they want to do. They want this mandatory vaccination. They want a microchip population, They want this cashless society. And they also want this Chinese-style control system, the Chinese-style societal control. They want the worldwide 5G control and surveillance grid and an AI-controlled Internet of Things. So that's why China is being touted as the ideal model of society, because it so effectively got rid of this coronavirus business. You can see it in the media how they're praising China for its its way of dealing with society. So this is all biblical. Everything that's happening right now goes back to the Old Testament, and basically a battle between two bloodlines. One bloodline not so human, and a battle between two bloodlines, a human bloodline and a not so human bloodline. And that not so human bloodline is in charge of the earth right now. You know, we've been at war for hundreds of years, and you know, we're barely aware of it, because to use one of their terms, it's a silent war, or you know, it's a quiet war with silent weapons. So yes, it's spiritual, and I've said this before, and this might not sound very encouraging, but the only thing that's really going to save us all is divine intervention. But at the same time, I'm not saying that we should sit back and wait for a deity to come and save us. You know, we have a part to play in this world as well. Yeah, we have instructions we have to follow. You know, we've got commandments that we have to keep to. But we also have a duty to stand up against this. You know, to show where our allegiances lie. Yeah. If you say nothing, then you've made your choice. Somebody made this quote. I don't actually know. I can't remember actually who made this quote, but it's better make a choice, because the devil owns the fence. Yeah. So if you do nothing, you've made your choice. Okay. It's just the same as what I said earlier, that silence is consent. So this would be the ideal time to stop smoking, stop drinking, stop eating poisonous, crappy foods. You know, put away the PlayStation. You know, stop playing those games. You know, stop playing those games on your phone. Yeah, stop using your phone. Use your phone as if it was one of those old landlines. You know, stop carrying it with you all the time. You know, stop wasting your time on sports and meaningless hobbies. Throw out that television. You know, if you want to find information, use the internet instead, and find information and verify it yourself. You know, put aside feuds and disagreements with your neighbours. You know, in short, put away childish things, and get ready to do what our generation has never ever had to do, and that's fight for our lives. Thanks for listening.